Hi everyone, Simon here with West Coast Food Service Agencies. Today we're looking at the step-by-step operation of the half-size vector oven. And let's have a look at the first step, how to turn on and off your oven. Power buttons here on the far left side of the controller screen. It's a simple one button, one touch. Press the button once, the light will go green, and the unit will go through its startup screen. Let's set our preheat temperatures for each cavity. I'll press the gear button, and then the down button, and then I'll select temps. This is asking for a passcode, which is a factory default of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I choose the green check mark. This gives me the option to change the preheat temperature for each cavity. Important point here is to set each temperature so that the top cavity is the higher temperature. I can touch the temperature and now I can enter in a new set point, and then same here for my second chamber. The green check mark accepts the difference, and then I can go back to the main screen. Let's now set the unit to preheat. You have two options. You can either set the unit up to auto preheat every time you turn the unit on, or you can select the manual preheat. To set up the auto preheat, I'll press gear and I'll go down to the very bottom page, and right here I'll choose auto preheat. It'll ask me for my passcode, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and green check mark. When I go out to the main screen, the oven automatically goes into preheat. As a second option for preheating, if you don't want to have the auto preheat option selected, I can just choose this preheat button here on the main screen. One press starts both cavities to the preheat set temperature we just asked the oven to go to. Right now it's showing me I've asked for 400 and the oven's at 102. This will climb until it says OK in both of these boxes. These boxes relate to each chamber of the oven, and the green check relates to the information being shown here. So right now the top cavity is going to 400 degrees, and the bottom cavity is set to 300 degrees, and right now at 105. Cooking in manual mode. I have two options when I use the vector oven. I can use the programs as preset, or if enabled, there's also an option to manual cook. If I'd like to manual cook, I first of all select the chamber I'd like to be cooking in, select the manual option, and now this gives me two individual timers. I'll choose the top one for 3 minutes, 300 and green check. I'll now choose the temperature. For the sake of the demo, I'm at 110. And then I also have to choose the airspeed. The airspeed will dictate the color and also the texture of the product that I'm baking. Once I've now set this small bit of criteria, green check mark appears and I can start that timer. Perhaps I've put another product into the same chamber and it's going to be a little extra long cook time. Now I can start a second timer on that shelf. Green check mark to start the process, and away we go. How to cook with programmed recipes. Ensuring that program is selected, I then start to see the recipes stored in this unit. Right now I'm on page 1 of 25 of recipes, with the folders appearing at the very top of this directory structure. If I use the down arrow, I'll move into my individual recipes, where I see that the oven is actually telling me in red the recipes that I cannot cook in that shelf at that temperature, or it's telling me in white the programs that I can use in that shelf at that temperature. I'll touch the program that I want. With a one touch, the unit goes right into cooking. It shows me highlighted here in green. Right now I'm in stage 1. The total cook time of this program is 4 minutes, so the countdown is working on that total time. But here I can also see that I've programmed stages. The time in the first stage is 3 minutes. The temperature for the sake of the demo is 110 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm only using 30% air. After I pass that 3-minute timer, I'll move into a 1-minute timer, Same temperature, but now I'm bringing more air into the unit. After I select this, you see the progress bar is moving across, and once I get to the end of the program, the light will flash in that particular cavity and I'll get a message here saying done. During a program recipe, I cannot change any of the settings on that program during the cook. The only option you have is to press the red X to terminate the cooking process and return back to the main screen. As example here now, I have 5 seconds left on this program, and when the cook cycle is done, the unit will tell me I'm done in this cavity and to remove the food. When that happens, I open the door, I remove the food, and I simply close the door. Let's create and edit a recipe. I'll choose the gear icon. I'll go to recipes. My passcode is the factory default of 12345 and the green check. And now I have the option. I can either find an existing recipe or folder and touch it to then edit that, or on these two bottom options, I can create a new recipe, or I can also create a new folder to group recipes in. Let's create a new recipe. I'll touch this once, and this goes now into my recipe programming stage. As you see, each recipe has 3 stages. Following the green check mark, right now I'm programming stage 1. I like to use this as a top to bottom setup. So I'm going to touch here first to create a recipe name. I'll backspace out the new recipe title that's in there already, and I'm going to put in a title for myself. So I'll put in here, oh, pardon me, I'm going to put in Tom's Ribs. If I'd like to, I can change the case into lowercase, and as well, symbols or numbers are available by choosing this button. Now that I have a name selected, I'll program stage 1. So again, top to bottom, my time, I touch the time button, I put in how much time I need. This will be 5.5 minutes. I'll select the temperature, and I'm going to put in 400 degrees here. And then I'll use the airspeed, 30% works fine for me at this point. Why we have multiple stages are that we can use different effects of the oven at different times of the cook. If I was using a baked product, I would start the process slower with less airspeed so that the product baked, and then at the final stages, I would add maybe a minute of same temperature air with a higher fan speed, and what that would do would also help me to color the product. Perhaps if I was using a frozen product as well, I would have a slower fan speed at the beginning to thaw and bake the product, and then I would bring in the effects of air to color, and also maybe a separate temperature as well, or higher or lower temperature to affect the doneness of the product. In this swing between temperatures, between stages, I can move 50 degrees on what the shelf is set for already. So if my cavity is set at 400 degrees, I can go here to 450 degrees in my final stage of this cook. Once I've completed this, I press the green check, and now it's saved into the folder. Let's now edit an existing recipe. I'll choose the gear button, I'll choose recipes, I'll put in my passcode, and then let's go find a recipe. Let's say I don't like the way biscuits frozen is cooking. I choose the recipe, and it goes into the existing recipe that's in here. This is a 3-stage program. I can tell because there's data and information on each stage of this program. As we talked about before, maybe this is frozen, which we know. So I'm starting at a lower fan speed and moving to a higher fan speed and a higher temperature at the end of the process so that I am browning and crisping the product versus burning it initially. Any component that I'd like to change, I'll just touch it, and then I can adjust that. So going from 5.5 minutes to 6 would be just by changing that, and then I would choose the green check mark to accept that. Let's delete a recipe. I'll choose the gearbox, I'll choose recipes, and I'll put in the passcode, 12345. I'll go find the recipe, say chicken wings 10. I don't actually need that many or that big of a recipe. Once I'm in the recipe itself, I'll choose the trash can icon. It'll ask me, are you sure, yes or no? I'll say yes, and that recipe will be gone. Let's edit a folder and the programs within it. I'll choose the gearbox, I'll choose recipes, I'll put in the passcode, and then I'll choose the folder that I want to change. And then I'll touch the folder that I want to change. This now gives me the existing folder, and everything in red here are recipes that are not in this folder existing. If I touch a recipe, it'll go white and appear with a green check. This recipe is now in the concessions folder. If I go to a recipe that's already in this folder and existing, corn dogs was already in the concessions folder, but I don't want it anymore. It's not a part of the menu. I touch it once, the recipe turns red, and that corn dogs recipe is now out of the folder. I'll press the green check, and that's how I change the existing folder. Now let's make a folder to arrange the recipes either in a day part, perhaps in someone's name, or maybe to a segment of your menu. I'll press the gearbox, I'll press recipes, I'll put in the code, and on the bottom I'll select new folder. Top to bottom, I'll start here. Touch here to create the folder name. Let's call this eggs. Again, I can change the case, or I can also put in a number or symbol. Checking the green check, I now have a folder called eggs, and I can go up or down through all my recipes. I'm on page 4 of 29, 5 of 29. As I go down through here, this is sorted alphabetically, and I can choose the recipes that I want in that egg folder. When I'm done, green check mark, and now I have a folder called eggs. Let's load recipe files from a USB. The important thing is when I take my USB to save the file that I've been sent either by on email or sent by another person to the top directory of the USB. Do not save it into a folder, as the oven will have trouble finding it. I take my USB to the oven, I lift the protective flap, and I put the USB into the drive. Coming to the touch screen, I select the gear icon, USB, load recipes, and then on this screen my passcode 12345. The oven will now read what's on my drive and give me the option to download and save the recipe files. By default, the oven saves recipe programs as uidump.ai2, and each further saving adds a numerical value to it. So that would be the first one I saved, and this would be the latest or the newest version that I saved. I can choose that file, it loads it, there's a progress bar that moves across, and what it does now is it reads the recipe file from the USB, it saves the presets to the oven, and as well now it overwrites any existing recipes that are on the oven. Once I get the rainbow screen, I can take the USB out of the oven, and now my recipes that I look to save are into the oven. How to save recipes from the oven to a USB. This could be for safekeeping, or possibly you have to send in the file. I'll take my USB, I'll lift the protective cover on the front of the oven, and I'll insert the USB into the oven. Choosing the gearbox, USB, save recipes. It'll now ask me for my passcode 12345. And now a progress bar shows me as the recipes are saving to the USB. how to view the log system in the oven. I'll press the gearbox and then I'll choose logs. This will give us basic general information of the last time that the cook cycle was run and as well the last time the oven was turned on. As well, it can help us to identify if there's any partial cooks where the program hasn't come to a full timing, and as well how many programs have been run in that period. If I tap in this box, it will also give me detailed logs that run by time and also tell me what I was running at which temperature and how often. This is the same file you would see if you downloaded it to your USB, but it's a great way to quickly look at the unit and see what's been happening with the unit, and if you have any problems as well, it helps us to understand really what's happening with that unit. I'll back out to the menu when I'm done and I'm ready to cook again. How to save the logs from the unit to a USB. This is a great technique if you possibly need to send the user logs from the unit into a head office, a maintenance log, or also to the factory for any input. I'll take my USB, I'll lift the protective cover and put the USB in. Choosing the gear, I'll choose the USB, and then I'll press Save Logs. This will save a file to my USB that I can then attach to an email or send to a service company if required. These logs will tell us when the oven is turned on and how the oven is operated. Once that's saved, I'll take the USB out of the drive. Now let's get into some user settings. How to change the date and time of the unit. From the main screen, I'll choose the gear. I'll press time, and this will now give me my month, day, and year, as well as my current time. Touching any of these values gives me a field that I can enter in a new value. Important when you get the unit to ensure your time is correct for the right time zone, as this is the time that the log system will use to report any issues or any errors, and it's great to have it relevant to your time zone. A green check mark exits us out, and now we're back to the main screen. How to change the sound settings. I'll choose the gear, I'll choose sounds, and now I have two different settings I can change. The volume of the unit, and as well the tone. Most of my operators and units are on a low tone with a medium volume. A lot of times that depends though on your location, the noise in the kitchen, and as well how easy it is for people to hear. These are all adjustable by the user. Green check mark, and I can go back to the main screen. How to change the temperature scale of the unit. I'll choose the gear, and then I'll come down one page to temp units. Pressing once changes it to Fahrenheit or Celsius, vice versa of what you had before. When I'm done, I'll exit out, and when I return to the main screen, all the temperatures have changed to that relative temperature. How to change the language on the unit. I'll go to the gear, I'll go down a page, and right here I've got a globe with EN right now for English. Every time I touch it, it's going to change the language preferences of the unit to relate to that language. These settings reflect the modes and also the presets within the oven. However, they do not translate your recipes if they've already been entered in another language. The light in each chamber will run for a certain period of time after the unit has started cooking. You can adjust that time if you choose, either less or more time, simply by pressing and holding the light button for 5 seconds It's going to ask me for a passcode, which is my user default of 12345. And now it's going to enter a time that the light turns off. So after how many minutes does that light turn off? I can set it here as 1 minute. Saves the electricity on the light, but also the usage of the light bulb. The light bulb will still turn on and flash when the program is done and completed. How to turn off the oven and cool it down at the end of service. I come to the power button, I press and hold until the light turns red. Once the light turns red, the touchscreen gives me a message that the oven is cooling down, and please open the door. You must open the door for this process to work. Otherwise, the heat will be trapped inside the unit and over a period of time will damage the inner. The speed at which the oven cools down is dictated on how far I open the door. If I just leave it open a little bit, or if I open it all the way, the oven will take a different amount of time to cool down depending on that. Once the oven is finished cooling down, the unit will turn itself off. So once you're at this point, you're fine to walk away and come back the next day. The first step in updating the firmware on your Vector oven would be to go to the Alto Shaam website. I'm here at alto-shaam.com. Shaam spelled SHAAM.com. Once I'm on the home page, I go over to Customer Support tab and down to Software Downloads. Once I get into this screen, if I scroll down just to the first line, we'll have Vector software here, and it's showing me the two different versions of software that are available. Vector H&F, so half and full size, simple controller, or Vector half and full deluxe controller. The easiest way to know which controller you have is the simple controller will have a majority of two colors, blue and gray on the screen. The deluxe controller will have a full color screen that is very comparable to an iPad or an iPhone in that it's swipeable and scrollable. I'll shortly show you on the oven how we find out what version of software we're on currently, but this is what we would compare it to see if we need to update. If I scroll down here, just a couple more lines, now I have Vector Multi-Cook Ovens. This shows me the Simple Control download and the Deluxe controller download. I'll click on the Simple Controller and it takes me to another page. This link right here is a great piece of information. I'll put the link in the video, but this PDF gives me a complete walkthrough and a visual guide on how to do exactly what we're going to do in the next steps. This is a great tool to have as you go through this process. Going back over here, I have again Simple Control, or I have the full-size Simple Control operator's manual if I need that for any follow-up, and then here in the largest font possible, download the latest Vector half series Simple Controller firmware. Click that once. That file is going to save down to my computer. If I click on the file I just downloaded, it's a zip file. I'll open up in whatever software you have on your computer to unzip files. And your screen may differ at this point, but I'm going to extract all these files into my USB drive. In my case right now it's on drive E, and I also named it USB drive. It's a great idea to have a completely blank USB drive, although not necessary, but it just helps as there's a lot of files that are going to download now that you won't need after the update process. I select my drive and I say OK, and all these files are going to unzip onto my USB. Now that that's done, we can move over to the Vector oven. Let's find the current version of software that's installed on this oven. So here at the main screen, I'm going to choose the gearbox. I'll scroll down and I'll press Oven Info. These two pieces will match to the website that we just looked at on altoshaam.com. IB being the interface board, the firmware and the version number, and then CB being control board and the firmware version number. I can relate those to the information on the Alto Shaam website in the software download area to confirm if there's an update that's out there for this unit. In this case there is. I can update to control board CB version 4.7, and that's the file that I just downloaded previously. Let's now update this firmware on this Alto Shaam Vector Simple unit. I'm going to follow step by step the PDF file that we looked at on the previous Alto Shaam website screen, so that those steps match up exactly to what you're reading. And it's a great idea to print that page as we go through this. So starting at step 2, I'll choose the gear icon. I'll touch USB, and then I'll insert the USB drive into the oven. There's only one way it can go, so if it doesn't work the one way, I'll flip it over and insert it the other way. It is critical that we update both the interface board and the control board in this step. First step though, we will update the interface board IB first. So I'm going to touch Update IB. It's going to ask me for the passcode, which is a user default of 12345. And then the unit gives me the opportunity to select the file that I need for my unit. So this vector is an H2, it has 2 cavities. H3 would be 3 cavities and H4 would be 4 cavities. F3 is a full-size 3 cavity and F4 is a full-size 4 cavity. So really important that I select the right software version. It downloads these files and it gives me this rainbow screen as it goes through the process. I will leave the USB drive in during this whole entire process. Once the screen has gone blank and restarted, it'll go blank again. And then at this point, I'll turn the oven back on by pressing the power button. You see here at this point, we also have a file running called autoconfig.ai2. That's also running a program on the oven as it starts up. After that autoconfig file is done loading, I have the rainbow screen again. The screen will turn off. It'll go into a restart screen. And then once it turns off again, I can press the power once, get my green light on, and the unit will restart itself. Now it's also critical, whether we need the update or not, that we also update the control board with the files that were downloaded from the website and that are on the USB now. So I wouldn't do just the interface board or just the control board, I would always do both. So here we're at step 8, I'll touch the gear button. Oh, there's new icons, look at that, how's that for an update? I'll touch the USB button. New icons as well, a little bit of bigger lettering. This is the great thing of software updates. There's always something better in it each time that you take the downloads. In this area, I'm going to touch Update CB. I'm going to put in my user default password of 12345, check mark. And there's only going to be one file on here for me to take. Touch it, and it's going to download that hex file. This may take several minutes. When the process is complete, the oven goes through several cycles and then turns off and will go blank again for me to press the power button. Very important during this process that we don't take the USB out of the drive. Here we are now into the rainbow screen, which will force a reset of the unit. It'll start to load again. And then when the screen goes black, I can press the power button, get the green light to come on and start up the system. On the restart, the oven will show me the software versions that we just downloaded. If for some reason at this point you see CB 0.99, something's gone wrong in the process that we just did. So all you're going to do is start back at step 2, upload the IB, upload the CB, and on this final startup you should have the current versions. Now that the screen has gone blank, I'm going to take the USB out of the drive. I'll push the protective cover hard so that there's a snap and it locks in place, and then I'll press the power button to the unit again. After we've gone through this whole process, I can hit the gearbox, I can go down to oven info, and this will show me the current versions that I just uploaded and that I'm also current with the latest firmware on the website.